Hey, well, welcome to our next episode. My guest here is Troy Hershman, athletic trainer, and I've been friends with Troy for a long time. We both were undergrads at Ball State University together, studying athletic training. He graduated a little bit before me, but I'm going to ask him some questions. And Troy, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Steve. This is really odd for me to be on the other end of this. Usually, I'm the one asking the questions, but I'm happy to do it. So, yeah,
Yeah, I had fun doing your podcast that you have called Off the Roll. And
yeah.
how many episodes of that have you made?
We are at episode number 40. It's been going on for almost 3 years now, which is hard to believe, but just like you, I mean, you kind of slide these in where you find time at, and
Yes.
there are times where um, I have a abundance of time to get up. Like I try to get two or three podcasts in, and then I may go for a month and a half where I don't have one. So
Yeah, I
I've
understand.
been told that I need to have more consistency, but my consistency is like a lot like athletic training. Sometimes you're really, really busy, and then sometimes you're not.
Depends on the season and depends on the weather, especially in the spring here, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Well, I've really enjoyed listening to a bunch of your podcasts of people that I know and people that I get to know by listening to the podcast, and they're really entertaining and they tell really good stories. Where can people find that podcast at?
So it's really on any your favorite podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
It's now on YouTube. I finally figured out how because YouTube Music, Google Podcasts went away, so it's all on YouTube Music or YouTube. It's just the audios of them, so they're all up on those podcast platforms, and then whatever you normally would listen to, maybe I'm trying to think of another podcast platform it would be on, but those are the main ones. So it's on the main podcast platforms. Yeah.
Yeah, and I highly recommend it. Those are really nice to listen to and get to know more about the people in athletic training as well. So that was kind of my goal. Also, is I wanted to come up with something similar to that and just do it on the YouTube version here. So I just want to get to people to get to know you better. And so, what got you interested in athletic training?
Oh boy. What got me interested in athletic training? Well, in high school, I played football my seventh grade year and figured out at the end of the football season that I was probably not destined to play football. So the next year, I had two really cool teachers in the junior high, Don Gray and Danny Pierce, that they recognized the fact that I still wanted to be involved. So they said, "Hey, why don't you be the football manager?" I said, "Okay, cool, I can do that." Um, and they were taping ankles of a couple of players that needed to be taped, and I would watch them, and I said, "Hey, that's pretty cool." And they said, "Hey, maybe we can teach you how to do this," and I kind of shied away from that. I wasn't sure that I could do anything like that, so. But I showed an interest. And so that spring of my eighth grade year, the athletic director called me into his office, a guy named Don Rapp, and he was in there with we had a team physician out of Lebanon that came out and covered football games, and he happened to be in the athletic office at that time, and they called me in, and the guy that was the basketball manager at the time, and they said, "Hey, we've heard you two are interested in being a student athletic trainer." And I'm like, "Well, what's an athletic trainer?" And they said, "Well, you tapes ankles and puts on band-aids and sometimes evaluates some injuries or whatever." And the team doctor's like, "Hey, we really need to have somebody out at football, and I'm gonna be out there for games, but we're interested in starting something with you two guys." So I said, "Okay, well, what do I need to do?" And they said, "We're going to send you to a camp at Eastern Kentucky University." And it was a Kramer camp. And so
Eastern
they had,
Kentucky. Okay.
so they sent me home with information and showed it to my mom and dad. And they said, "Well, what do you think about this?" And I go, "I don't know. They said they'd pay for it. It'd be free." And so my mom and dad kind of looked at it and said, "Well, we can take a little vacation out of this deal." Um, so I grew up on a dairy farm. So anytime my dad could get out of milking cows a little bit,
Good luck.
um, he was going to find a way to do it or stick my uncle with milking cows, either way. So,
So where did you grow up?
what's that?
Where did you grow up at?
Oh, I grew up but northeast of Lebanon, Indiana. So
Okay.
I went to Western Boone High School, which was 26 miles away from my house one way. Um, I
That's
had a little
on
over an
bus
hour
time.
bus ride when I rode the bus.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was so that'll lead into another story that I'll tell you here in a little bit because my athlete training career almost ended before it got started.
Okay. So
Um,
continue with the camp story.
yeah, so I go to camp
Yeah.
with this other guy named Brian Ralston, and it was a great camp. But the best part about this camp is I met a guy named Jim Dickerson, and did not know
There's
did
a
not
name.
know anything about his Ball State connections at the time. The only thing I knew was that when he saw our address, he looked at my mom and dad and said, "Hey, I grew up around Lebanon just the other way." So he grew up around that same area. He was a Boone County kid just like I was. And so I was happened to be the youngest kid there at this camp, and there was all sorts of shenanigans going on at this camp. They taped some kid in his underwear in a chair one night and stuck him out in the hallway,
Boy,
and there
you're
there
lucky
was
it
there was
wasn't
a lot of
you.
stuff. It wasn't not me. I did not get messed with one deal, one thing. Nobody messed with me, and I think it was JD who told the counselors, like, do not let anything happen to this kid. He's from my area and he's the youngest kid here. And I just had a great experience. And you got to think
That's
that
awesome.
looking back on that, I mean, Bobby Barton was running the camp. I mean, Dr. Barton was running the camp. You got Jim Dickerson there. They had, I think they had Sue and Al Green were there as instructors. I mean,
Names.
it was a all-star version. Um, and I've heard this too, like people that had gone to Snowball's camp at Floyd Central. I think Vinny talks about that. I mean, just back then, everybody just helped everybody. Um,
Yeah.
it didn't matter where you were from or who you were with or who you're working with. They just liked helping out. So I go to this camp in East Kentucky, have a great experience. Learn how to tape ankles, learn how to tape a knee. Um, just really thought this is really really cool. And I'm really one of two at my school that knows how to do any of this stuff. Um, and so I came back and they said, "Hey, we need you to work football." And I went, "Oh, okay, fine, great. That's probably going to be a manager anyway, so this is even better." And I had taken a lot of notes because I was trying to learn as much as I could. And the first injury I had in the first football game was a neck injury on a
Good Lord.
kickoff return.
Oh my.
And so all I remember was that they told us not to let it, if somebody had a neck injury, you don't let them move. You don't let them get up. You don't let them move their head. You keep them down there until you can have somebody rule out what's going on. So I run out there. It was a home game. So the team doctor was there. And I run out there and the kid's starting to get up, but he's complaining. It was a stinger, is what it
Yeah.
was. But I didn't know any better. No, you got to lay down and don't move. So I got the head. The team doctor comes out there and asks him questions and stuff, and then he's like, "Troy, you can let go of his head now. He's going to be okay." And I went, "Okay, fine." He gets
Protect.
up
There you go.
and we walk off the field. But I thought back on that, the first thing I would have as a student athlete trainer in his first game would be a neck injury of some kind.
Oh,
Yeah. So
God.
it back then in the early, so it's 1983. So I was doing a lot of learning on my own. I was trying to find things to go to. I remember um, my sophomore year, I went to a course in the old Methodist sports medicine building there on Meridian, the 16th Street. That I learned about contrast baths, which I thought was like the coolest thing ever and stuff, and just little things like that. I did go back to an advanced student Kramer workshop at Illinois State, and Kathy Schneidweiden was running that camp. Mike Page, who was the head athletic trainer at College of DePage was there. Jim was not there. Somebody else was running that camp for Kramer at that time.
Mhm.
Um, but I just had really, really good experiences, and
At a very young
we
age,
at a
talking
very young age. Yeah.
seventh grade, eighth grade, going into high school. That's, amazing because most of us didn't understand what athletic training was until we left high school and then we got to college.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and that was the thing is that, at Western Boone, I actually had a decent little athletic training room. Yeah, I had two treatment tables, I had a taping table, I had a cabinet full of supplies. I was actually interacting directly with the AD. If I ran out of tape, I went and talked to him about that. Um, I was kind of, I mean, for lack of a better person being there, I was learning on the fly, but at the same time, allowed to make a few mistakes and stuff, and nothing was critical. I mean, probably the worst thing that happened was on my little taping station. I had a table, and on the table was a jar of skin lube, like the big Kramer jars of skin lube,
Yep.
and on the other side of that was a big jar of Kramer Jezik. And I had this kid come in, and he was one of those kids that uh straight A honor roll student, but zero common sense. And he's like, Troy, what I got jock itch. What do I do to put
Oh
on
my
the jock itch?
God.
And I'm taping, and I'm like, just
Spin
grab some of that stuff out of that jar on that table there. He had a 50-50 chance to get the skin lube versus the Kramer Jezik, but he got the Kramer Jezik.
Oh,
And I guess he slathered that stuff all over his groin. And I actually had to call his mom about a quarter of the way through practice. On it, we didn't have cell phones. We had to go
yeah.
with landline. I had to go to the coach's office and call his mom. He was in the fetal position in the locker room crying because it burned so bad. And then he tried to go in the shower and wash it off with no soap,
That's the worst experience.
which made it 10 times worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
He came back the next day and he goes, "You need to make sure you label that stuff." And I go, it's labeled. It says this is a topical analgesic and this is a lubricant. You just couldn't read for
50
whatever
50
reason.
chance you
Mr.
get the
Straight A
wrong
student.
chance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, that was about the worst thing that happened that I had to deal with. And of course, you had some bad ankle sprains and
Yeah.
stuff that happened with that. But it seemed like, and again, for the most part, if anything really super bad happened, I remember we had a kid that a junior high kid, eighth grader kid that blew out his knee. And I never saw him. I never did any rehab with him or did anything like that. I don't even know if I knew what I was going to do with him anyway if he saw me. But back then they just went straight to the doctor
Yeah. And
and ended
surgery
up having
and
surgery. And
in a
yeah,
cast
I
for
mean,
months and yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Much way of
exactly.
different treating it once you get to the college setting and other stuff. So I'm going to end us right here and we're going to end
Okay,
part one and then we're going to do part two. So,
perfect. Okay,
right. We'll hear more about how you got to college and what experiences
yeah.
you had at the university level.